Kim's Keto 365, right?
Yes.
All right, everyone. Welcome, Dr. Rob Kiltz and Carnivore Conversations, Kiltz's Conversations, with whatever it is. But I'm really pleased to share a conversation with Kim Forbes, which is Kim's Keto 365. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, we're going to talk about everything keto. Maybe we'll throw in some carnivore, maybe some Mediterranean conversations in there, how we can sort of inspire people on this journey, right? Well, maybe you can tell
Sounds
us a little bit
amazing.
about where you're at and what's your, basic story that got you here.
So I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. I've lived here my whole life. Basically, I started out just over 3 years ago now. I was at my heaviest weights at 105 kilos. I had just found out I had insulin resistance and I knew I needed to make a change. So my dad had actually done banting following Professor Tim Noakes after his heart attacks, and he had seen a lot of success. So that sort of led me down the path of researching banting, and then that led into keto. So yeah, I started out not really knowing what I was doing and just sort of winging it and looking online and that sort of thing. There wasn't as much information then as what there is now. Um, but yeah, it's trial and error. And, every day wasn't easy, but you just persevere and it got easier as I went. And I think I really enjoyed trying recipes and making things keto. And that sort of really helped me enjoy the journey more. I actually didn't realize when I started out that I could reverse my insulin resistance. I thought I was just going to have to sort of manage it the rest of my life. And I think I was about 6 months into keto when I had bloods done again and realized I wasn't insulin resistant anymore. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
that was the biggest win for me. The weight loss has been an amazing bonus. I've lost about 99 pounds now. But it's the health benefits that really are what is important.
You feel amazing. How young are you, by the way? Can you
I'm
share
35.
that? 35?
Yeah,
And how long have you been on this keto journey?
3 years.
3 years. And
Yeah.
now can you explain what banting is to those in this world who may not know banting?
Yeah. So banting and keto is really very similar. You're eating the same sort of foods and that. It's just with keto, you obviously track your carbohydrates and you want to make sure you stay in the nutritional state of ketosis. Where with banting, you sort of have a list of approved foods and you just stick to that. So you're not tracking as carefully.
And how much do you know in South Africa about Atkins and a comparison between Atkins and banting and keto? Do you have any comments on that?
So I don't think Atkins was ever really popular in South Africa as such. I know in America, Atkins was quite a big thing, but I think we only really caught on to banting because of Professor Noakes, because he wrote a lot of books and that on banting, and then it sort of took off over here.
Which I think in America, Atkins and banting are very similar, and so
Yes.
many authors have written similarities in this. And so you've lost a tremendous weight. Were you on medications previously and you're off them, or tell
So
us about your tell us about how you felt and the changes that you've also gone through.
So obviously, when I was told I had insulin resistance, it was recommended to go on metformin, but that's when I started doing my research and I wanted to try lifestyle changes first. I didn't want to go on medication because I feel like it's something that you could end up on your whole life, and I definitely didn't want to go down that path unless I had to. So I'm grateful that I never ended up having to.
So essentially, when you said you're looking for the proper doctor, what
Mhm.
was your experience going to the standard doctors on all of this concepts and ideas of dietary changes in nutrition?
Yeah. So to be honest, my doctor, I'm very lucky. Although he did, when he diagnosed me, recommend metformin, he was happy for me to look at lifestyle changes first and said, okay, try it and come back in 6 months and we'll look again. And he was very supportive when it worked, and he's been supportive of my keto lifestyle ever since. He actually asks me a lot of questions about it and that, which is great. So I think I'm in a very lucky position. I've seen with a lot of people that hasn't been the case for them. So I'm very lucky.
And tell us a little bit about your blogging, your coaching, and what you're doing to help others
Yes.
that are suffering from the ravages of a plant-based and standard recommended nutrition or diet.
Yeah, so when I started my Instagram page purely for accountability. And the thing was to post a picture of my food every day for 365 days, which I did. And while I was doing that journey, through doing research and that, I decided to study a diploma in nutrition, which I duly did. And although it didn't sort of align with keto and what I was doing, it did teach me a lot of critical thinking and how to look into research papers and stuff like that. So it was very beneficial anyway. But yeah, in 2020, I was a travel agent previously, and I was retrenched when all the lockdowns happened. And a lot of people had been asking me already if I would help them with keto and that. So I decided to start my coaching business. And I honestly, really, truly believe everything happens for a reason, because I've never been happier. I enjoy so much what I'm doing and helping other people do what I did. It's so rewarding. And I think it helps for them also to have a coach that's been through it and understands what it feels like to have the cravings. And, I can chat to them late at night when they're struggling and that sort of thing. And I think that helps.
So how do you approach a patient that's coming to you with is it mostly weight needs, change it to lose weight, or is it other medical conditions? How are they approaching you?
So the most common is weight loss. And then the second most common I find is women with PCOS, because they've tried dietitians and that, and predominantly the dietitians tell them, oh no, but you don't need to cut out carbs and you don't need to do this for your PCOS. And they try to encourage medication, which is not what everybody wants.
And so how do you what's your sort of general approach and the changes you recommend and number of meals a day and do you go through a sort of standard diary of what they're eating and one
Yeah.
thing I've
So,
always found is if you ask people what they ate, they usually say healthy and organic and clean,
but what does
and
that
that's about it.
mean?
What does it mean? Right?
Yeah. And I think we've been misled so much by, the food companies and that about what healthy is that we all have a different definition of what healthy looks like. So you do have to dig into it and see exactly what people are having. But I think I like to start people off slow. We start by cutting out the toxic oils and switching to healthy fats, and then cutting out the processed foods and the sugars and that sort of thing. And you as people become comfortable with those things, you add in little tweaks as you go. And once you're comfortable on a keto lifestyle, then we look at if that's working for you, if we need to look at some intermittent fasting, which I'm a big fan of. I really truly believe it's the reason I don't have loose skin after losing so much weight is the fasting. Um, and then, if the fasting's working well, we look at things like a carnivore protocol for gut health. Some people can't tolerate dairy. So I look at different options depending on how the clients are doing and what their specific needs are. And most importantly, what will suit their lifestyle, because otherwise it won't be sustainable.
So, traditional dietary advice in the standard. Now, I'm sure. So, you went to nutrition school. You have a
Yeah,
degree in nutrition.
a
What
diploma,
was what's that?
a
The
diploma
what?
in nutrition. Yeah.
And yet, what does so? Although, did they teach keto and teach carnivore?
No. No, I think the basis of it, although there was a lot on how low carb can be beneficial for controlling blood sugar and that, it still tended to steer towards the standard sort of diet recommendations of low fats, and that sort of thing. So yeah, but at least I did learn a lot of critical thinking out of it, and really to comb through research papers and that sort of thing. So I'm glad I did it, but yeah, it didn't really teach what I'm coaching.
Are you finding a lot of research papers that support the carnivore? You said carnivore predator uh, diet, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's not enough research I think that's been done on carnivore yet, but that is out there is very positive. And I think the same for keto, although there's a lot more research coming on keto now, or low carb in general. But I really believe that the more research that's done into it, the more positive we're going to see. It's just that, unfortunately, research like that doesn't get the funding.
And I know in Dr. Noakes, I think, had trouble. They attempted to take his license away from
They
practicing.
did.
And so obviously the general medical community and the nutritional community probably doesn't agree with Dr. Noakes even to this day,
Yeah.
and likely doesn't agree with what you're sharing. Have you had any kickback or issues in sharing your advice?
A little bit, not too much. I think mainly because I do coaching and that, and my clients are like, I've never had a client complain or anything like that. But I do think if you're at the doctor level or upwards in South Africa, you do get a lot of flack like that. And I mean, even though Tim Noakes won his court case, he won the appeal as well. A lot of people still don't agree with him. And the dietary guidelines in South Africa, despite those cases being won, have never changed. So, which I find quite sad. It was proven that this was the correct advice, and then they've still left us eating low fat and high carb diets.
We're on live, and we have some people from Denmark. Teresa
Oh,
Engelbrecht,
fantastic.
Nixie, thank you, and Sarah. Sarah, nutrition definitely does not align with keto. Let's see, Amber asked about, is keto diet okay for diabetics and people with nut or vitamin C allergies? So I guess the question is, in the allergy side of things,
Yeah.
I'm sure you see a lot of patients, clients with allergies. How do you
Yes.
approach that?
So look, it would obviously depend on what the allergy is. But like, for example, I've got a client who's allergic to eggs, and obviously eggs are quite big on keto and often on carnivore as well, depending on how you do it. So, little things like that can be a challenge, but I mean, there's nothing that you can't work into a program for someone. The most challenging I've had was someone who didn't eat eggs and wanted to do vegetarian, which is very difficult for me because so many of the vegetarian foods are grains and things that are inflammatory. So, very difficult to do a sort of plant-based lifestyle in conjunction with keto if you don't eat eggs.
So that's right. So I tell the vegetarians, eggs, butter, cream, and cheese.
Yeah.
If you stick to that, you'll be likely okay. But if you
Not
adventure
ideal,
to
but the best you can do it.
but in essence, a quiche, I mean, eggs, cream, butter, and cheese likely contains all the minerals, vitamins,
Yeah.
and the macronutrients. I think that I
Yeah.
find very, very, very helpful. And what about? I'm sure you see, again, back to the allergies,
Yeah.
food allergies. Are you? How do you approach the food allergies?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of the food allergies that I have seen is like people that are gluten intolerant and things like that, which predominantly we're cutting a lot of those foods out on keto in any event. Um, and people who do have more specific like autoimmune conditions and things like that, then I steer towards the carnivore side because then you really are cutting out any of those issues.
And are they? You're finding, for seeds and nuts tend to be more antigenic and inflammatory.
Yeah,
Fruits and vegetables with the seeds in them, certainly. Without the seeds, maybe they're a little bit less. But
yeah.
but how is it in getting patients to go from the the plant-based keto side to the purely carnivore animal side?
Look, I think for some people, they take really well to it. I do a 30-day carnivore protocol for myself once a year, and a lot of my ladies do it with me. And I've actually found that a lot of them will continue on a carnivore slash ketovore even after the 30 days because it really works for them, works for their lifestyle. It simplifies things a lot for people. There aren't so many choices and it's actually easier. Um, but for others, they really want to still have their veg and they enjoy having that sort of thing. So I do believe it's a personal choice at the end of the day to see what's going to suit you best.
Are we physiologically different, or do our cells really work the same in all of us?
Sure, that's a difficult one. I think predominantly we are the same, but I mean, there obviously are differences. No two humans are exactly the same. It's not that we are the same, but very similar from person to person. And I think there are slight differences, especially between, say, men and women. Like, women have to focus more on their hormonal cycle and stuff like that. For example, when it comes to fasting, I definitely do my fasting differently depending on where I am in my cycle and that sort of thing. So there definitely are differences, although predominantly we're the same.
Right. Our cultural and knowledge base is different. Our belief systems are
Yes.
different, but our cells work the same. There are some genetic predispositions to some sensitivities or functions and diseases that may be a little bit greater or lesser in some people than others, for sure. But
Yes.
we're counseling our clients because we're all so similar, and yet the preferences. So our belief systems, our habits, how do you work
Mm.
on those belief systems and habits? Well, I'm Italian, or whatever your culture is, in your clients. How do you deal with that?
Look, I do think you have to adjust for things like that because, especially when it comes to religious beliefs, sometimes people have certain things that they need to do in terms of their religion versus, their diet and that. And you have to incorporate it because at the end of the day, people always will respond to their core beliefs. So if something they're doing is going against those beliefs, it's not going to work. For example, if you have a client who doesn't eat pork for religious reasons, you can't go and include pork in a program. It's not going to work. So it is tweaking things to work. And again, when it comes to cultural things, like, for example, you said in Italian, they like to have pasta and that sort of thing for their family life. So finding recipes that can sort of mimic that a little bit and give those comforts when you're craving them helps.
And the question came up about cycle. You mentioned cycle
Yes.
fasting. What is your recommendations on
Yeah.
fasting or dietary changes throughout the menstrual cycle for those that are still cycling and or those that are working to conceive?
So, for what I do personally is the week after my period, I find is the best time to do longer fasts. So, if I'm going to do an extended fast, say 24 hours plus, it will definitely be in that week. I find it easier because that week you don't have any cravings or any of that kind of thing. I don't like to fast for the 5 days leading up to my cycle because I know there's a lot of important hormone building and everything that's happening then. And although fasting is a healthy stressor, I just feel like at that time is not the ideal time to be stressing your body. Also, do lighter workouts in those 5 days and that sort of thing. And then for the rest of the month, I find intermittent fasting is okay. If it was a client who's looking to conceive, though, I would also give a break for fasting around ovulation.
So what do you call fasting? What's your regimen for fasting?
So I like to mix mine up a bit from week to week, but my intermittent fasting would be anything between a 16 and 24-hour fast. I like to include at least one 24-hour fast a week, though, just for gut health and giving my gut a break from any digestion. And then I include a 72-hour fast once a quarter. I try to do a 7-day fast once a year. Um, and yeah, I just like to mix things up because I feel like my body responds well to the variety.
Interesting. And so the how many meals a day do you generally recommend?
Generally, two, sometimes three, depending on your fasting window, but predominantly two.
And so the first, so a 28-day cycle, day one, that now, so the peri-ovulatory time, day
Yeah.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, in essence, eat at will, eat what you want, or stick to the nutritional recommendations on your plate.
No, still stick to the nutritional recommendations. So, I do think that you can benefit from eating higher protein before your period, especially beef, because it's good for hormone building. But yeah, predominantly we stick to our recommendations throughout the month.
And talk about, everyone used the word healthy fat.
Yeah.
What do we mean by healthy fat?
So for me, it's predominantly animal fats. I'm a big fan of avocado as well, and that, but predominantly it's animal fat. So butter, ghee, lard, duck fat's fantastic and really tasty as well. Um, I like to keep the bacon grease in that for cooking as well. So those are the fats that I like to stick to.
So I always say fats from an animal and oils from a plant. Avocado is a plant. It has
Yes.
avocado plant oils. So, that's one of the things that, because we use the term healthy fats, but ultimately, the simple separation is plant oils and fat comes from an animal, which I think is important. And
Yeah.
for those now, when you say avocado, you mean to eat the avocado or drink the avocado oil?
I don't really use avocado oil so much, maybe for a salad dressing, but not often. It's more eating the avocado itself.
And so tell me a little bit about the fruits and vegetables that you sort of allow in your keto lifestyle.
So from a fruit perspective, it would be definitely the avocados and then berries. That's pretty much it.
And how about on the vegetable side or the other plant products? I like to just say plant
Yeah.
products versus animal products, right?
Yes.
Fat from an animal, oils from a plant, and then are you eating plant based or animal based, or are you mixing it up? And
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your general recommendations.
So I like to focus on protein. I feel like if you get enough protein in throughout the day, then you're going to hit satiety. You're not going to have a lot of cravings. You're going to feel good. So I always tell my clients, make protein the hero of your meal, and then the veg is there for your enjoyment, really. So, like, for example, you might make yourself a steak and then have some mushrooms fried in butter on the side, or something like that, because I think a lot of people see it and they make these big salads with like a little bit of meat in it, and then they wonder why they're feeling hungry in half an hour's time.
And what's your thoughts on? Well, then what about the fat? How do they get the fat into that meal?
So definitely choosing fatty cuts of meat. I think you get really good quality fat like that. And then obviously you want to cook in an appropriate fat as well. So like if I'm cooking my veggies, predominantly it's in butter. I might add some cream as well, something like that to up the fat content a little bit. But I also think if you're in the weight loss phase of your journey, adding a lot of fat isn't necessarily necessary because your body is going to tap into fat stores, which is what we want.
And on the vegetable side, do you have any like nose to vegetables and nose to which ones would you say, oh, don't touch that one? That one's really bad.
Look, obviously your starchier veggies to stay in ketosis are not going to be a good option, but then I also like to avoid things that are really high in your anti-nutrients, so stuff like spinach and that's high in oxalates and that sort of thing.
And so are you finding a lot of your clients have a lot of oxalate and lectin damage in their history?
Um, I think it's a bit hard to say coming from a standard diet because you've had so much going on. So to pinpoint exactly what it is difficult, but I definitely do see an improvement when you cut those things out. And I think
And
it's a mistake people make a lot on ketos. They rely too heavily on things like almond flour, and then they still have bloating after meals and that because their gut's not healing because of the oxalates and that sort of thing.
so what's your take on all the flours made out of coconut and almonds and the milks and the butters made out of those products? What do you tell your clients?
I think it's okay to use as a treat, but it really should be seen as a treat, not something you include in your day to day lifestyle because over time it's going to cause a problem. So, if it's your birthday and you want to make a cake and it's going to use coconut and almond flour, that's okay. But if you're going to be having a bread made with almond flour every single day, it's going to cause problems.
And what about sweeteners? What's your thoughts on sweeteners, and how do you advise your clients on
Yeah.
which sweeteners they should be using or not?
So if I'm going to use sweeteners, I stick to monk fruit or stevia. So I try to stay away from anything that will be hard on the gut health, like xylitol is very popular in South Africa. I'm not quite sure why it got so popular in South Africa, but almost everything that's sugar-free has xylitol in here. And I really feel like it has very negative impacts on the gut. And I always tell my clients, if you eat something and you bloat afterwards, that's your body telling you it doesn't agree.
It's bad. And so tell us a little bit about a typical client. Maybe you can tell us about one of your recent clients, their basic complaints, and how you've helped them, obviously without their names.
Yes, sure. Um, Let me think who's a good example. So I've got a client actually at the moment who really struggled with falling pregnant, which is why she came to me. She didn't have any weight problems as such, but had really been struggling with fertility. She had done 2 rounds of IVF already, and she was going for a third round and said that the doctor had actually recommended to her that she try a low carb lifestyle before the third round. So we did keto, and she was successful in that round of IVF, and she is currently, I think, 6 months pregnant. So babies will be coming soon. And I just think, that kind of thing is life changing. People think of this as a diet or something you do to lose weight, but it's so much more than that. It's about your health and getting your physiology running properly again. It's like restoring to factory settings.
So to reduce the inflammation, which allows natural conception to happen, or
Yes,
improves the IVF, IUI, or other assisted reproductive
yes.
modalities is really important. How do you coach them once they're pregnant?
So, I believe, look, I know probably a lot of people might not agree with me, but if this lifestyle helped you get pregnant, why would you suddenly change it once you are? I don't think there's anything wrong with doing keto during your pregnancy. Obviously, do chat to your gynae or your doctor about it. You need to do what's right for you, but I don't see any reason why you can't stay on keto or carnivore through your pregnancy. Dr. Berry's wife, Nisha, just had a baby and she stayed ketovore through her pregnancy. And it's the second time she's done that, and it's gone very well.
Yeah, keto, carnivore are critical for pregnancy, getting pregnant, staying pregnant. And ultimately, what I teach everyone is fat is the only fuel for the body. Sugar
Yeah.
plants are not the fuel for the body or the baby. Fat is. So
Yes.
we're eating these carbohydrates unrequired in our diet, but it's our standard diet, and it's probably one of the hardest things to get rid of. But I
Yeah.
certainly say it's very, very important in gut health, and you're seeing a lot of patients with gut health issues. How long is it generally taking many of those patients to eliminate all that bloating and stuff?
It's a long process. I think even for me myself, I was keto for so long and I saw progress up until a point, but I reached about 10 months into my journey. My weight loss stalled. I wasn't seeing more progress. And I actually started coaching with Benazadi, and he recommended carnivore to me because he said, it sounds like you've still got gut health issues. And I did the 38 days carnivore. And this is why I do it at least once a year, 30 days, because I never felt better than when I was on carnivore. My energy levels, there was no more bloating. And I think it's also the ultimate elimination diet, because when I came back into keto, I added foods one at a time for 2 days so that I could see if I had any reaction to anything. If a certain vegetable then was giving me bloats, I knew to cut it out of my lifestyle. And that could be different from person to person.
So, what's your thoughts on just going straight carnivore all the time for people?
So, to be honest, I think if I didn't cook for my parents and my family and that, I would do carnivore all the time. But I find it hard to stick to for myself with making the food for everybody else. Like
Sure.
keto, I can manage. So I do think it's a bit of a personal choice, but yeah, it's either going to work really well for your lifestyle or not. There's a lot of things I really enjoy about carnivore, and one of it's the simplicity, because there's not like these limitless options of things to have. You don't have to really think about stuff. You go, you get yourself some good quality meat, and you're ready to go. So I love that. And it's also actually easier to dine out on carnivore, I find, than keto, because you just stick to ordering a steak, you ask them to cook it for you in butter, and you're good to go.
And tell us a little bit about the how your clients and you discuss the fiber issue.
So I think it's probably my biggest struggle is people telling me, but don't I need fiber? And to try and explain that in actual fact, you don't. And that in a lot of cases, although you're told to take fiber if you're constipated and that sort of thing, it might make you think you've had the result, but in the long run, it's probably doing more damage than good.
What
It's a
is
bit like
const
taking antacids for heartburn. It does more damage in the long term than what it does any good.
I guess I even wonder what the concept of constipation is. Is it
Yeah,
not being able to go? Well, on carnivore, you only go once or twice a week, so I guess I'm constipated.
exactly.
But a standard diet is you have a bowel movement once or twice or thrice a day, which
And I think that's where
ultimately
people get confused. They feel like something's wrong because they're so used to that, but they don't realize actually it's just there's less waste.
it's all it is, and it's once it fills up, it's waiting to be like sent on its way, right? And
Yes,
Dr. Paul Mason from Australia really does some great evaluation and showed the basic studies that fiber actually is probably harmful for us, and eliminating it will help us feel the very best, eliminates all complaints to gut problems, and that's amazing part. What talk a little bit about raw versus cooked plants and vegetables and things like that.
so I try to only eat cooked veg because I do think it breaks down a lot of the fibers and stuff that we can't really process a bit better. So there are a few things that I still have raw, like if I do have lettuce with a salad and that sort of thing, but it's not very often that I will have that. The only other things I really obviously have raw is things like avocado, but that's more a fruit.
So the cooking kills the bacteria, yeast, and viruses, and it may disable the toxins, and it simplifies the fiber into simple sugar, which ultimately is metabolized, or it's digested much better than
Better.
complex carbs. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these ideas of, and so how does your family and friends feel about your journey?
I think when I started out, a lot of people thought I was absolutely crazy. But the more they saw my results, the more people started to ask me, but hang on, what are you doing? What is there to this? And became more and more interested in it. I've even got a friend that's a doctor who's now quite keen on doing it for themselves. So, and in the beginning when I started out, they were very concerned for me. So I do think the proof is in the pudding. And as people see that actually you are still healthy and now you've done this for 3 years and the weight stayed off and it hasn't come back on like everybody says it will, I do think that that starts to sway people.
It,
And
it,
I'm
it,
lucky,
it
my family has always been very supportive, so that helped a lot.
and tell us a little bit about in your counseling coaching, how
Yes.
you integrate exercise.
So I always tell my clients, I use myself as an example because I lost my weight without doing any exercise. But if I could go back, I think I would have incorporated exercise because I incorporated it once I reached my goal weight because I felt like it was the next step in my journey. But if I go back, I think I could have had better results had I incorporated it sooner. That being said, I don't think you need to do crazy kind of levels of exercise. If you can do some weight training 3 times a week and just move, whether it's walking to the shops instead of driving your car or whatever it is, you'll be fine.
And that's what exercise is unnecessary, but motion is critical in life. You got to get up
Yeah.
out of bed, get off the couch, go for a walk. If you want
Yes.
to get into the motion studio and do some Pilates, yoga, some weights, do it. Get out down on the floor, do 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups, and get moving and creative. Are you doing most of your counseling online or
Yes.
coaching counseling online, or is it all any face to face anymore?
To be honest, because I started during the lockdowns, and our lockdowns were really strict here. For a long time, you were not allowed to leave your house or anything like that. So it all sort of started online, and it's just really continued like that. So I've got clients, my clients are predominantly South African, but all across the country. And then I do have a few in the UK, in Canada, in the US. But yeah, predominantly scattered around South Africa.
So how do people find you in this world? How like where it's like suddenly Kim's Keto 365. Like where did she come from? She's amazing and magical. And tell us a little bit about how people can find you.
So I think in the beginning, I got a lot of clients through Instagram because people were asking me, how did I do it and that sort of thing. And then it's just really been word of mouth. So my clients have seen results, they're happy, their friends ask them, then they join and that sort of thing. And I mean, from my very first clients, a lot of them are still on my group coaching. So they don't need the one on one coaching anymore, but they still like that community and sharing ideas and, being part of that support system. So it's just been really awesome.
So in some ways, there's been a lot of benefits from the COVID shutdown for so many of
Yeah.
us, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And I do think another big thing that came out of the whole pandemic was people became a lot more health conscious and they also started to question things more. And I believe both of those things are really good.
So how do we change the paradigm of the standard African, Australian, American, global nutritional recommendations that you're speaking and saying they're wrong, essentially?
Yeah.
Although keto does allow some plants in there for sure.
Hmm.
Well, what kind of things can we all do to make the changes that are critical for our children and their children and their children?
I think sharing information is critical. So if you come across a podcast that really speaks to you, share it with your friends, share it with your family. They might not agree, and that's okay. I don't ever believe in trying to force someone to believe your ideas. You don't need to prove yourself right in any way. But if it resonates with them, then they'll tell some more people, and that's how we'll spread the message. I don't think anytime soon we're going to get governments to change regulations or suggestions or anything like that. So we can just focus on, our direct community around us, and that starts to have a knock-on effect.
Would you say the majority of your clients kind of stick with this? Most diets, people drop off, they gain their weight, they can't stay
Yeah.
it. What is your experience and you really came into this world in the keto world. You weren't, although you likely experienced diets
Yeah.
throughout your lifetime, correct?
Oh, I tried everything from cabbage soup diets to really calorie restricted things. I tried it all. And nothing really worked for me or stuck long term. I mean, there were other things that I lost weight on, but they were never sustainable. And I think that's one of the reasons why this lifestyle worked for me and has worked for so many of my clients is that it's not a typical diet where you have an end date in sight and then after that you'll go back to the way you were eating before, because it won't work. So people see this as they're taking it on, and I always tell people when they inquire about my coaching, are you looking to do this as a short-term diet or are you looking to make lifestyle changes? Because I only want to take on people who want to make lifestyle changes, because I don't think that this lifestyle or what I do will work for you if you're only going to do it for a short period. If you go back to eating the standard diet, you will pick back up the weight, and then you will have wasted your money on the coaching. So I do think it's very much lifestyle changes. And I think these lifestyle changes, once you get past those carb cravings and things in the beginning, it's very sustainable and enjoyable.
And which part of it do you think is the most important part of the dietary changes, nutritional changes? I say diets are dead, and now we're talking about the true human nutrition. So,
Yeah.
what do you think is the single most game changer in the story?
To me, honestly, like You would think that the changes are cutting out the carbs or anything, but I think the biggest change for me was actually mental. And it was making that shift to actually learning to love myself and respect my body and not have things that don't make me feel good. And I think a lot of people think a health journey is physical, but it's far more mental than what it is physical. If you can really learn that self love and self respect, then you're 90% of the way there.
So getting people to love themselves the way they are and giving
Yes.
them the strength and the power, permission in some way, because I think so many of us feel like we have to have permission to be ourselves in essence.
Yes.
We sort of following the rules of the rulers, and we so often are hit with the ruler and it
Yeah.
hurts, and by the ruler. And so that mindfulness is so masterful in sharing the love for
I
thyself.
100% agree.
Do you
And
integrate it? Go ahead. Please, Kim.
it's that's being able to make your own choices for your body. And I always tell my clients, nobody knows your body better than you do. Nobody. Like, yes, people might have studied human physiology and that, but you know your body. You know when something doesn't feel right. You just have to learn to listen to your body again.
It although you're really sharing with them a new story,
Yes.
because I feel like eating a donut, I feel like eating cake, I feel like eating the pasta. My body tells me I need to do that. And I'm eating emotional. I mean, obviously, we all have our emotional
Mm.
pain bodies that we're eating for, in essence, because it
Yeah,
makes us feel good.
it
What's
does.
so what's your best method to help people on that mindset change?
So, something I do with my clients, and because most of us are emotional eaters, and that's where a lot of the problem comes in, is that I get them to sit and make a list of other things that make them feel good. And it's going to be different from person to person, but things that come up often are like spending time with a loved one, or watching a comedy, or reading a good book, other things that can make them feel good. And then I tell them, when you're having that moment where you're not feeling great or you've had a bad day and you're feeling like turning to food, you go and get your list and you pick something off that list and you do that instead. And generally, by the time you've done that, you don't feel like eating anymore.
And so do you incorporate any meditation, prayer, anything like that, or mantras and things?
Yeah, so for myself, I definitely do, and I do encourage for my clients as well. I do aerial yoga and I do a lot of meditation, and I always tell people that's my weekly therapy. I just feel like that kind of thing is very good for just calming you and putting things in perspective. Sometimes we feel like we've got so much going on and we get a bit overwhelmed, and just taking 15 minutes to meditate and be quiet and let your mind calm down makes you see things from a different perspective.
And do you incorporate that? Do you journal? What about journaling and things like that in your
Yeah.
coaching? And I mean, really, it sounds like you have a dietary recommendation, but
Mm.
I imagine it's a tremendous amount of coaching and cheerleading
Yes.
and particular procedures in how to make the changes.
Yeah. So I do encourage journaling. I have a keto lifestyle journal. My clients all get an electronic copy, and they can buy like a hard copy on Amazon as well. But basically, it's not your traditional journal where you would just write things in, because I mean, you can use any book for that, but it's got little prompts in that. So, for example, it's got every day you should write down 3 things you're grateful for about yourself. And that kind of helps to reinforce and get people on that mindset of really loving themselves and appreciating themselves at that moment in their journey as they are. And I do think that that helps a lot. So there's a lot of little things like that in the journal just to help people get on the right track.
And what's your age range in your clients that you're usually taking care of?
Predominantly, I would say from sort of early 30s up until my oldest client is 65. at the moment. So, but mostly sort of 30s, 40s.
50s, 40s and 50s?
Yeah, I think a lot of women in their 30s that have experienced PCOS and that, and then women in their 40s, 50s, sort of either perimenopause or going into menopause and sort of not knowing where to go, not wanting to take hormones and stuff like that.
And what's your thoughts on how to encourage younger women? It sounds like you're mostly taking care of women. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So I currently only coach women. And my reason for doing that is because I really believe part of the reason my coaching works so well is because I've been through it and I understand. And I don't understand it from a man's perspective.
Sure.
So, not to say I would never coach a man or anything like that, but I believe there's better coaches out there for men.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. You mentioned about menopause. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about your thoughts on managing menopause for so many women going through it
Yes.
in the nutritional side, obviously.
So I definitely recommend Dr. Mindy Pulse's book, The Menopause Reset. She goes through a lot on her own journey in that book and different things she tried in that. And a lot of it actually has to do with your years leading up to menopause, which I never realized until I read that book. You know, things like heavy metal toxicity and things like that affect your menopause journey so much because of the extra stress on your adrenals and that sort of thing. So I think it's definitely a process, and I always recommend to my clients, whether they perimenopause or going through menopause, to read her book, because there's so many gems in there that you wouldn't have thought of.
So what's the gem? Name one that you
So
really to help the
definitely
clients
the
listening.
detox. I think definitely the detox, you know, cutting out beauty products that have all these toxins in, cutting out the chemicals in your household. Like, I never realized how much of your household you can clean with simple things like lemon and vinegar, you know, but we're sold all these fancy products that are actually packed with toxins that are not good for us, and the fragrances, those sort of things. So, you know, I think people think of a detox and they think of some sort of juice cleanse or something like that, but it's actually cutting out the toxins from your life, getting rid of the plastic containers, drinking out of glass water bottles. Simple changes like that can make a huge impact. And then
What
obviously when it comes to diet, following keto and those sort of things, and cutting out all the inflammatory foods, and that help your hormone journey so much.
do you think a lot of those the lectins, oxalates, phytates also
Mm.
have some contributing factors in all of that? Have you found by
Definitely.
eliminating
I think your people underestimate how important your gut health is. Your gut affects everything in your body, from your hormones to your brain to just everything. And I think cutting out those things is so beneficial.
and you mentioned about the coaching and how important it is, and I'm sure many of those people get to that weight loss, but ultimately the continuous connection. Tell us a little bit about how you keep everyone inspired to keep on the journey and not venture off the path.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I push a lot with my ladies is that we are all human. And at some stage, you're going to fall off the wagon, and that's okay. To really be kind to yourself and just move on. When I started out, I fell off the wagon many times. My carb cravings were insane. And slowly but surely, as I developed that self love relationship and I was respecting my body more, it became easier to say no. And the longer I went without those things, the less I wanted them. And I think when it comes to inspiring the ladies, they inspire each other, because people will share on the group. They'll say, oh, I went to a function this weekend and I stayed keto and this is what I did. And that inspires everybody else. So I think sharing stories is so beneficial as well.
It is, and those groups. So you have a Zoom group. How often?
So we have I have a WhatsApp group for the ladies, so we chat on there daily, and then a Facebook group where we will do like live coaching calls and that once a week. And then I've got my private coaching clients. We do one-on-one calls every week and we chat daily.
And what about food menus and things like that? Do you help them with that and
Yes.
sort of because it's so hard and complicated for us to figure out what am I going to eat today.
Yeah, so I do have the meal plans. I've got a number of different meal plans that they can choose from. I've got seasonal ones and that sort of thing. So ones that are more winter based with like bone broths and things in, and ones that are more in line with summer. So there's a lot of different options for them to choose from. But I never give that sort of meal plan that your traditional dietitian will give, where you must eat this for breakfast, you must have this for lunch, you must have that for dinner. I don't think it works long term. I rather want to teach you the tools to make good choices so that this can be sustainable. So I'll provide all the recipes, the guides, and the information, but I really encourage my clients to choose and make decisions that are going to work for them.
What's up next for you? Or you have any things in the plans for new creations, ideas, and sharing?
So I'm busy with my website at the moment. That'll be the next step. And eventually I want to get to a coaching portal on the website where I can have pre-recorded sort of lessons for people to go through, and that in their own time. Because although the coaching calls are nice and people can ask questions and that sort of thing, I think for some people, to be able to maybe when they are not busy in the evening, just pop on and do a lesson can be very beneficial too. So that'll be the next step.
So what would you say is the number one lesson for those that are suffering from problems, menstrual problems, fertility problems, weight problems, even maybe anxiety, emotional depression problems?
I think definitely the first place to start is eating real food. So if it comes from a factory, don't have it. Go back to basics, stick to your meats and your whole foods and everything, and then you can start to tweak it from there. Once you've cut out all the processed stuff and all the nonsense, then you can say, you know what, that's really worked for me, but I need to take it a step further. Or, I'm comfortable just eating this whole food. It's up to you. I think for some people, just cutting out the processed food and the sugar and the junk works. But for most of us, we do need to take it a bit further.
And how long do you think the average client takes sort of to get to their goal? Again, the weight thing is the most important,
Yeah.
the number one thing people are seeking. But again, even whatever those medical issues, because we claim obesity is a medical issue, which I don't think so
Mm.
personally. I think it's the illogical recommendations of the modern world for
Yeah.
the wrong nutrition. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of diseases are like that too. They're lifestyle diseases. We're sold this thing that it's genetic, but genetic in what way? Genetic because your parents also ate the way that you're eating, or genetic because you actually have a gene for it?
So let's get to children.
Yeah.
What's your where does keto and carnivore fit in for kids between 5 and 15? I guess a little 15-year-old.
Yeah.
Let's just say 5 to 15. Is it helpful for them also?
Look, I think it's, as Dr. Berry always says, it's the proper human diet. If you're human, it's the proper diet. So, regardless of whether you're a child or an adult, there's never going to be anything wrong with eating real food. And for my daughter, she eats what I eat. I do let her indulge in more fruit and things like that, but predominantly she eats whatever I'm eating because that's what I cook for the family. So, I think it's never too early to start teaching your kids good nutrition habits. And people think she's so funny because at 3 years old, she'll tell them that's not healthy, you know? But
Pretty
I
amazing.
just think it's
Wow.
good to start early.
I've been talking a little bit about in utero,
Mm,
our babies are exposed to the toxic chemicals of many plants, and obviously the industrial produced foods that aren't good for us. And
yeah,
so if you start at the stage when you're pregnant in the full on carnivore keto way, and I always say one meal a day is the very, very game changer
yeah.
best. And I agree with you. Fasting is lasting, and it's so critical in all of this. So, how do we convince those others, which sounds like it's just sharing the story and inspiring them in your journey and your energy and compassion and passion to this.
It really is, because I think you can't convince someone who doesn't want to see something that that's the right way to do it. Like, for example, if I come across a post on social media, or actually people tag me a lot in posts on social media that are contrary to keto, and I won't go and try and convince that person that keto is a good idea because they don't want to see it as a good idea. I think you do a lot more good by just sharing the knowledge that you do have and sharing your results and experiences, because then the people who want to learn will come to you, and you can make a lot greater impact on people who want to know and who want to learn more, and they will then share that with other people, and so it will grow.
Do you have a lot of your clients that are afraid to go to their doctors and tell them what they're doing with you and
Yes.
either don't say anything or don't go?
So when my clients ask me what do I say to my doctor, I always say, well, if they ask about your nutrition, say you're trying a healthier lifestyle and you're focusing on eating meat and veg. That's all you have to say. Don't use the word keto, because that seems to be a red flag for a lot of doctors. But if you say you're trying to eat healthier and you're focusing on meat and veg, no one has a problem with that.
So simply healthy way and don't need to argue with your doctor or bait them
No,
with the thing that they're going to get all upset about and maybe kick you out of the practice, right?
exactly. Rather avoid the argument and just tell them what you're doing rather than giving it a label.
Is your diploma those in the school that you went to, the leaders in the school, is anyone open, do you think, to looking more deeply and talking about keto and carnivore?
Do you know what? Keto was mentioned, and not in a negative light. It was just sort of like, this is something that there's research ongoing about, and they're starting to do more research into these sort of things, and there's been positive results around low carb. So I don't think they would be not open to it as such. I just think that there wasn't as much research, maybe as, look, it was 2 years ago, so there's been a lot more research in the last 2 years. I don't think anybody frowns upon it, but I do think because of things like how Professor Noakes was taken to task, and that professionals are scared to put their names behind it.
So ultimately, scientific research is only marketing for those that are selling a product, but maybe our clients need to understand that there is no science that's straightforward in nutrition. It's not like the science
It's
of eating
nuanced.
a high carb, low fat diet was right. It wasn't. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm. Yeah, I think something you also have to take into account is it's very nuanced. And when you're looking at studies, it's not black and white. You have to look at, well, who were the people that were studied? How large was the group? How long was it studied for? There's so many factors at play. And I think studies can easily be manipulated to just showcase what they want you to see. So I do think you have to take everything with a pinch of salt. And I always encourage people to question and research. And I think one of the biggest things I try to do for myself is watch content that's contrary to what I think, because that will keep me questioning and looking at new research and looking at ideas that are different to mine, because you don't want to get stuck in a dogma ever. That's the reason we're in the situation we're in.
Right. We don't want to be in our dogma like we're all in dogma. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. And in some way, keto, carnivore, paleo, Mediterranean, pescatarian, vegan, vegetarian, we're all somewhat dogma. It's like
Yeah.
religion, politics, and all of our cultural belief systems that this is what we
Yes.
believe, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
in South Africa, I imagine it's the same as the United States. There's a tremendous amount of increased diseases. Healthcare costs are up. Would you? Is that what's happening there also?
Absolutely. And I think we saw it a lot with COVID, and that is the hospitalizations, and that due to obesity or, you know, being predisposed to having more severe COVID due to your health and that sort of thing. We saw it a lot. And I do think that it's made people a lot more aware. And I think something that people have also realized is that skinny doesn't equal healthy. I do think that shone a light on it a lot as well, because a lot of people can appear healthy because that's what we've been told healthy looks like, but you're not necessarily healthy just because you're skinny.
And wouldn't you agree that we label people obese and that's not right either?
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and,
Like
and that's, go ahead.
even the BMI scale itself, it doesn't make any sense.
So we're
So,
labeling people a disease. They feel bad. You go to the doctor. Your doctor's not telling you, "Hey, how you doing? You look great, fantastic." Yeah, they're making you feel bad, and
yeah,
so we need to eliminate this obesity. The obesity epidemic is easily eliminated by stop labeling people obese, and then start talking about the proper human nutritional solution, which is keto carnivore, one meal a
yeah,
day. And the mind shift, as you said, is so important for
it
everyone
is.
to begin to see the beauty in everyone rather than, whoa, look at that person like XYZ. And as you
Exactly.
said, because I've seen so many lean, strong, healthy people die. I have so many lean, strong, healthy people not be fertile. They must
Yeah.
have a medical condition or something diseased in their body, which ultimately is so simple.
Yeah, it's so true. I think people go through so many different struggles and everything that are actually unnecessary if we were just given the correct information for how to take care of our bodies.
And my suspicion is blood pressure is wrong. Hemoglobin
Mhm.
A1C is wrong. Christine just mentioned, they lower the numbers to get more people in the disease label that will require more treatment and drug.
Medication. Yeah.
So in essence, all of the diagnostic tools we have today are built on a plant-based low animal fat diet and very little to no red meat and 3
Yes.
to 6 meals a day. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the problem comes down to as well is if you do ever struggle with weight, the thing that you're told all the time is eat less and move more. And there's no focus on the quality of the calories that you're eating or the response your body has to eating certain things. That's not spoken about. It's just eat less and move more.
Which ultimately we know more people are moving more today than ever before, yet we're having more and more problems.
Yeah.
Plus the issues of joint problems and surgeries. It's kind of crazy in so
Yeah.
many ways. The ket Is it important to be in ketosis?
So I don't think you necessarily need to be in ketosis all the time. I do believe our bodies were designed for metabolic flexibility. That's why we have the ability to fuel off glucose and off fat. I think our ancestors predominantly ate an animal-based diet, but if they came across a fruit tree, they were probably going to eat the fruit. So, if you're not in ketosis all the time, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. And I think metabolic flexibility is an important part of your health.
Well, I'm going to just make one little my craziness.
Mm,
We are not metabolically flexible. We only burn fat. That's it.
okay.
This is my theory. All right.
Yeah.
So, theory number one is fat is all that matters. If you're fat and there's a famine, you're alive. If you're skinny, you're
Yes.
dead. Why are we all getting fat? Because for the last 3 million years, plus or minus something,
There's been
we've
no
lived through
famine.
famines. And so, if you decide, I'm not going to eat this week, you're dead. And
Yeah.
so, why would we burn sugar when fat is everywhere? Can you explain it? Can't,
No.
can't.
And I
We
do believe for the processes that the body needs glucose, it will produce its own glucose. You don't need to be eating it.
No one knows about the glycobiome, but I'm a little bit of a nutcake on the glycobiome.
Yeah.
Glycosylation is critical. So proteins are not functioning on their own. They require sugars to bind to them. The sugar binds to them, so they're functional. So
Yes.
glucose, glycans, galactose, mannose, and other sugars are critical for glycosylation, which happens
Yes.
so fast you and I can't even understand it. So there's another process in the human body that is something we don't even talk about.
Mhm.
And almost no one knows that glucose's function is glycosylation. It can
Okay.
be converted in the liver along with
Yes.
amino acids to fat because type 1 diabetics die for lack of fat, and liver failure patients die from lack of fat also, because the only place amino acids and simple sugars can be converted to fat is in the liver. And
Okay.
because liver failure patients have high insulin and high glucose, they die
Yes.
of they're emaciated and skinny. And then type 1
Makes
diabetics have no
sense.
insulin, they're
Yeah.
emaciated and skinny. And so the more you give them insulin, the fatter they get. Because the purpose of insulin is to do one thing:
Yeah.
make fat. Make
Yeah.
fat. And so when everyone says, and again, we all say this, my theory is we don't have any metabolic flexibility. You must burn fat in
Okay.
the mitochondria. But if everyone realized that sugar is for glycosylation, but excess
Yes.
sugar causes glycation, which causes every disease we suffer from. And
Yeah.
and that's why what you're doing is so important. Keto, carnivore, fasting, and having a love affair with yourself, not a hate affair,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. You've got to love yourself at every stage of your journey. Doesn't and loving yourself doesn't mean you don't want to improve. It just means you still love yourself where you're at.
Well, uh, uh, Kim's Keto 365, I'm inspired by you. And the
I'm
inspiration
inspired
of
by you
people like
too.
you inspire all of us to be healthier, to love ourselves, and make the hugest changes in the universe. And I appreciate
Absolutely.
you. How can
I
people
appreciate you too.
thank you, thank you, thank you. From Syracuse, New York. Where are you in South Africa? Johannesburg?
Johannesburg, South Africa.
Beautiful, amazing. All over the world, like we're human beings, no matter
It's
your
so
color, size,
incredible.
shape, all over, right?
Absolutely.
Well,
So, so amazing.
we're going to be following your continued rise and success to helping and coaching to health and wellness on this beautiful journey. Much
Thank you
love
so
to you.
much. And to
Thank you,
you.
thank you. We love you.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
everyone.
much for
Thank you.
chatting to me.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. To my Instagram, I'm going to say goodbye, and to our Facebook, YouTube fans. Thanks so much, Kim. We appreciate you.
Thank you
God
so
bless.
much. Thank you.